Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. Sorry about the glare, as always. I put this shirt on. I got to do some laundry when I get to Springfield tomorrow, which will be Sunday. And maybe this video will upload in a timely manner. So I pulled this shirt out of my closet. Still has the tags on it, but I think maybe you could see it's a PTC shirt. It means prime time certified. Yeah, so like I'm gonna send one of these to Deion Sanders out of Colorado because he's prime time. I think it means I delivered something on time. Oh, that's a weird thing, like right across my face there. I don't like that. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to get to my reaction about okay, I got to admit, I don't watch the safety meetings or whatever they're called. I only watch the videos that Lyle at No Hippie Trucking and Transportation does about that. So he could do a video and totally lie about what went on at that meeting, and I would think that that's what went on. And then I might talk about it like I'm going to talk about stuff today. But before I get to that, I wanted to talk a little history/law. So I read this article on CNN's website that several states are considering laws that will ban the Chinese nationals or Chinese business entities from buying land or agricultural land in their states. And it just so happened that I was somewhere the other day and I saw some Fox News, which I wouldn't normally consume, but Sean Hannity was talking about the Chinese buying property by all our military bases. And, so obviously this is now more important than the war on Christmas, and we got to do something about it. But what I said to the person I was with when I saw this is, look, the Chinese can't buy any land in the United States that somebody in the United States doesn't sell to them. But let me back up for a second, because there used to be a lot of state laws that said that all sorts of people couldn't buy land. And it typically, the statutes would say stuff like, anybody who's ineligible to be a U.S. citizen can't purchase land. And those codes usually meant Asian people. And it was meant to target the Chinese, and this is back in the 19th century, right? It was meant to target the Chinese, many of whom built significant parts of our infrastructure, namely the railroads. But it ended up having this impact on Japanese people who were U.S. citizens, and in many cases, because after Japanese people came here, then they started having children here, and those children were naturalized, or they were born in the United States, so they were automatically citizens, birthright citizenship. So those laws, though, were on the books for a long time, and they were finally struck down. But this anti-Asian bias has been around for a long time, although there were laws in other places that impacted other people that were not like of European descent. So anyway, I got to thinking about this because I used to do a lot of real estate law, and I've paid attention to stuff in school, I think. And there have been a lot of things that have happened in our history that we shouldn't ignore, and we should really take a good hard look at them in terms of what we're seeing today. So let me just take, for example, Texas. Now, North Dakota and I think one other state, maybe Montana or South Dakota, is talking about doing these laws that would prevent Chinese people from buying property here. And let me just first say this, that's not really a great answer. I think that we need to say, when it comes to China, the government, like the People's Republic of China, right? We need to say, hey, you can't screw us on trade. Hey, you don't get any military secrets. We're not letting you, we're going to move chip making to other countries, or we're going to onshore it. I think that's a good decision economically and strategically, right? We cannot be beholden to a country that's adverse to our interests, or at least partially adverse, for really important things like chips, right? So there's an eco-political component to this. However, supposing for a moment that, and by the way, I am right now in the panhandle of Oklahoma, but like 250 yards that way is the panhandle of Texas. And, there's about 8 billion acres out here of nothingness. And, it's all agricultural, right? And that's what all these small towns out here, they rely on agriculture. But here's the thing, supposing for a moment that you own 10,000 acres in Texas, and no one wants to buy the property, but you would really like to sell it and retire. And supposing that the only people that are interested in it is a Chinese company. And by the way, just for you keeping score at home, Smithfield, the largest pork producer in the world, is owned by a Chinese entity. I mean, it employs thousands and thousands of Americans, and I guess indirectly people like me, because I pick up at Smithfield facilities. But there's a lot of stuff that people don't even realize is owned by foreign entities. The largest food producer in the world is Nestle, right? Nestle's not a U.S. company, even though they've been around in the U.S. for generations, but they're not a U.S. company. There's a lot of things that are global or international. But let's say that you're going back to the guy that wants to sell his 10,000 acres in Texas. He's got no other buyers besides a Chinese company or a Chinese person, all right? Oh, dude, thanks for backing in there. That made my life a lot easier. So what do we say to this guy? Do we say, hey man, sorry about your bad luck, but you just have to eat it. You just have to keep this 10,000 acres of grass, and you get no value from it, even though you paid for it, right? So that's the first thing, right? Like it's what is called a restraint on alienation, right? And that's a legal term. It means, alienation means the right to convey it to somebody that's not you, right? To another party. So a restraint on alienation. But it also is a violation, in my opinion, of the Fifth Amendment. Now, a lot of people know that the Fifth Amendment means you don't have to incriminate yourself, right? That's part of it, right? Many people don't know that in addition to the 14th Amendment, which obviously came after the Fifth Amendment has a due process clause, just like the 14th Amendment. The Fifth Amendment also has what is called the takings clause. And what that says basically is you can't be deprived of your property. So if there's a restraint on alienation, right? In other words, the government is going to tell you who you could sell your property to, then that may be construed as a taking, because in my example, the guy who has the 10,000 acres can't even get it sold. So I just, I bring all this up because it's just government overstepping its boundaries. There's a lot of government that oversteps its boundaries in ways that, like, certain people think is a great idea, but it's just another example of individual rights being trampled. Now, these same governmental entities will let, like, you know, they'll be like, yeah, everybody can have guns and we don't care, you know. I mean, that's a liberty they want to support. But when it comes to you selling to somebody whose first language isn't English, you know, it's Mandarin, well, they got a problem with that. And so hopefully these legislators will say, well, if the only person who wants to buy it is Chinese, we'll buy it from you at fair market value. Then the government can own all the land. Then they don't have to sell it to anybody. So anyway, that's my hot take on that. So a couple other things real quick. This is more truck driving. Everywhere I go, I'm usually driving slower than other people want to go. It doesn't matter if I'm going 10 miles over the posted speed limit, which I'm usually not. Somebody still is going to be climbing up my butt. And I've talked about speed limiters and, you know, how fast prime trucks go. It doesn't matter. And so today I was coming across US 54 through New Mexico and Texas, and now I'm here in Oklahoma, and I'll get up to Kansas. And, you know, people were like trucks climbing up my butt when I'm going down the road. Now, mind you, even when the speed limit's 65, my truck only will do 64, even though the speedometer says 65, right? That's if I'm going balls to the walls. Okay, then when we get in Texas, the speed limit's 75. I can't go 75 no matter how bad I want to. But here's the thing, if you're one of those guys that hates how slow Prime drives and you happen to get behind a guy like me or any other big corporate truck company on a road like 54, let me explain to you, because you super truckers apparently don't actually know how to pass on 2-lane roads while driving a semi. But here's how you do it. Instead of climbing up my ass until there's a place that's open to pass, or until I get to one of those sidings where you can just pass, you gotta lay back. You gotta lay back, pay attention, get off your phone, pay attention to what the road looks like, and then you got to get up to speed, because these trucks, I don't care what kind of truck you're driving, they don't have a ton of mid-range acceleration. They don't have a ton of acceleration anyway, let's be candid, right? So when the opportunity to pass me comes up, you need to already be doing like 72, 73 miles an hour. Instead of like one chucklehead from, it's a company out of Brandon, South Dakota. It's like 2 letters. They're a small refrigerator carrier. This guy pulled out, I am not joking, and he had like a long-nosed Pete. He pulled out and just sat there. I'm looking in my mirror, I'm like, dude, what the hell are you doing? And then finally I guess he couldn't find a gear or something. If, you know, he finally was just like, got back in behind me. But, you know, if you don't know how to pass, then just get off my butt and leave enough space for somebody to pass you, okay? And I see this every time. I've passed people in my little Prime truck here. Why? Because I know how to time it, you know, and like there was a guy, like I said, he was right up my butt, and there was this sweeping left-hand curve. You think he'd pass me on that? No. He waited till there was an uphill straightaway. I'm like, you dunce. So anyway, I can't fix stupid. You know, if you can't figure out that you don't want to go from my speed to now start to accelerate once all the cars are passed. And also, some of these guys are taking, like, I'm like, okay, cars pass me. 1001, 1002, blinker, 1003, 1004, 1005. Now they're in in the left lane. Now 1006 they're accelerating. That's not how it's done. And there were a couple of people that, you know, like one super trucker with an empty flatbed, he passed the guy that had just passed me, but he passed him on it going up a hill on a double yellow line. I'm like, I'll just wait and see what happens. All right, so enough of Tim Travel's driving instructions for super truckers. All right, so this new proposal or idea, or I don't even know what it's called, to pay trainees $1,200 a month, or excuse me, a week. So let me first say this. At $900, we were already, and I say we meaning anybody that has a truck that's training somebody, already paying $1,200 a week. Why? Because we're paying taxes. Okay, so I could go back and look at all my statements for all the people I've had on my truck, and it varies because people live in different states. You know, I've had people from, you know, Kentucky, Nevada, Minnesota, Missouri, where else? New York, different places on my truck. So, you know, different tax rates, right? But generally, I plan on $1,200. So, if we're now at $1,200, then I'm going to have to budget in $1,550 or so a week. Okay, that's the first thing. And then Lyle said, well, it's a $300 increase, so that's like $1,200 a month. But it's not really $1,200 a month increase. It's because a month is 4.3 weeks. So it's more like, you know, I don't know, $1,300 a month, okay, increase. So here's and I commented on his video, but I've told some trainees this, not all. But I've said, look, you know, like the last trainee I had on my truck, I said, hey, you know, things are kind of tight. And I'll be very honest with you. I'm running a business, right? I've taken on an employee, but if there's not enough work to justify that employee, then I'm going to cut the employee loose. And so I would say to any trainee, hey, I'm willing to put you on the truck, but I don't even know where that glare is coming from. I'm willing to put you on the truck, but you know, I have to see the value. In other words, if you're paying somebody $1,550 a week, let's say, then, you know, I'm not just trying to get $1,550 of value from that person in a week, because it's $1,550 in cash, but then I got somebody living on my truck. It's like I hired an employee, pay him $1,550, and by the way, now this salary on an annualized basis is well over into the $50,000 range. If you look at $1,200 a week, right? $1,200 a week, you know, you're talking 52 grand plus two, you know, you're talking like 56 grand a year, right? So I'm hiring somebody for around 56 grand a year that's a trainee, and then I'm letting them move in my house. That's basically how I look at it. They're moving in my house. So I'm giving them a place to stay and a fairly lucrative job, and they're in training, okay? So, and I've had this happen before where we were at 900, you know, I did a come to Jesus meeting with ops and my fleet manager, and I'm like, look, bro, you know, I'm not going to sit for 10 hours between loads when I'm paying a guy for sitting, because that's the other thing that people need to keep in mind. When somebody's salaried, you're paying them every minute of every day, and you know, there's a frictional cost. But with a truck, the truck has a frictional cost, and when it's not moving, then, you know, that's a problem. And it's kind of illustrated. If you go back in, I did a video called The Tale of Two Loads, and I explained that. And I kind of broke down the numbers, because they were like, oh, sit around and take, 5 days to go, 500 miles and make 3 deliveries or whatever. And so that's kind of where I am with this. I'll, like, it's not going to deter me from training somebody, but I'm going to be candid with people. Because I trained just 4 years ago, $500 a week. Okay, and it wasn't for 50,000 miles either. And I wanted, and the other thing I said on Lyle's channel in a comment was, I feel like when you get to a certain point, people don't even have skin in the game. It's like $1,200 a week. Honestly, that's way more than a lot of people that come to Prime have ever made. Ever. $1,200 a week, legally. And, if I was making that, let's say that's significantly more. Like, let's say that's a third more than I'd ever made in a week. Usually I'm making 800. And then I start making 12. Why am I in a hurry to get off this dude's truck? Like, I don't even have any responsibility really, except for driving my shift. I drive, I go to sleep. Now, my trainees do handle a lot of stuff after a while. They don't wake me up if we go to a shipper or a receiver. They go do it, right? But I really do think that, like, when I was at $500, I had some skin in the game. I wanted to work hard and get off my trainer's truck, right? I liked my trainer, but I wanted to make more money. And by the way, even when I did get off my trainer's truck, I wasn't making $1,200 a week. Even driving solo and driving a lot of miles, I wasn't making that kind of money. So, I'm just a little concerned. I don't have a problem with it conceptually, but if the loads aren't there and the loads aren't paying, that's a big ask. To basically, what we're talking about is a 33.33% pay raise for trainees at a time when fuel is costing more, everything's costing more. Like, I just got a sandwich from Subway. It was like, it's like $10, right? And so I get that people need to make more money, but for me, the balance still has to be the same, right? In other words, I'm willing to pay the $1,200, but then Prime has to step up with, loads that pay well and that keep coming like a fire hose. Because, if I'm sitting for one flipping second, I'm going to be, angry. And it's not at the trainee, but the trainee is going to bear the brunt of it at some point. If I'm like, if I start making less than the trainee and we were on the road, now I'm not broken down, not home time, I'm making less than the trainee, then the trainee's going. No matter how much I like them, I'd be like, hey, where do you want to go? Home or a terminal? I'll drop you off. So that's a big issue that I can't answer. No driver can answer. That's on Prime. So if Prime thinks that they got the the freight, cool, but show me the money. So anyway, I will talk to you soon. Love to hear your comments.